Good morning, and welcome to our last installment of our Spring of Awesomeness series at Prairie Lakes AEA. I'd like to welcome today's guest, Michelle Cordy, teacher and applied researcher. Michelle began teaching in 2001 and has taught both in K-12 and higher ed settings. Her focus has been on mathematics and technology integration. Michelle also engages in classroom-based research with partners from academic institutions as well as industry partners. Currently, she teaches third grade with one-to-one iPads. She's a Google certified innovator, an Apple distinguished educator, and science education. If you have any questions, over to Michelle.
Awesome. Thanks very much. You cut out a little bit there. So if I cut out at all during this talk, just give me a little wave. Or if you need me to slow down because there's a bit of lag time, just give me a little wave or popcorn in, jump in and let me know. So thanks so much for having me here. It's totally a pleasure. I'm really excited to talk about why we should show up and refuse to leave in education. Whether you're a classroom teacher like me, a tech integration specialist like yourself. What is your job title?
Instructional technology consultant. We serve about 50-ish schools. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. So I think you should show up to and refuse to leave too, and so should your teachers, and so should our students. And we should have this sense of really owning it, connecting with people, and feeling empowered to be in the spaces that we want to occupy, whether they be the classroom space or for kids being a topic, just having the strength, the will to be there. So that's what I want to talk about today. It's really those three things. And, schools can be messy. It's a Monday morning. Who doesn't feel a little bit frazzled on a Monday morning? You had all weekend, hopefully, to get so much done, and Monday morning rolls around and it's like, oh boy. So there's a lot of noise in education. There's a lot of busyness going on with so many pieces. But really, I think the most important piece in this whole thing, and I know you'd agree with me, and so are the teachers in your district, is the people. The emotional labor that we do, the work that we do with one another is really the most essential thing about teaching, and it's kind of what makes teaching so special. Is it's such a human thing to connect and to learn together. So I really want to focus on that aspect first, and the ways in which we connect to one another. So yeah, I'm going to talk about connecting, owning it, and being mindful today. So first we'll start off with connecting. So fun fact for science people that are going to check this out is the same element of carbon structured in totally different ways yields totally different things. So on the one side, you see graphite, and graphite is organized in these kind of layers. And if you think about a pencil, as you drag your pencil across the page, you're actually leaving a string of graphite along there. So graphite is soft, it's dark, and it's what we use in pencils. But diamonds, same exact element, but the atoms are bonded together in a different way. And instead of getting something that's soft and dark, you get something that is strong and clear and beautiful. And it's durable too. So when we connect with other educators inside and outside our organizations, I think we want to strive to create these diamond networks, something that is strong and clear and durable instead of something that's dark and soft. So I hope that metaphor holds up for you. And this idea comes from this book that I read called Connected by Nicholas Christakis. And what they talk about in this book is that the structure of the network defines what that network is able to do. So if we think about creating diamond networks for our students, for ourselves, then the way that network is organized actually has a huge impact on what we're able to achieve. So let me give you a concrete example. Picture a fire, and you want to put that fire out. So one way to put it out is to have all these individuals running from the water source to the fire and back with their very own buckets and scooping the water and running back to the fire. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes that's how I feel. In education, we're all running around with our little buckets. We're scooping up the water, and we're trying to put out the fires. I see you nodding there. So maybe you feel like that too. Maybe you feel like that this morning, Monday morning. Um, and there's a better way to organize putting out a fire, and that is, instead of all these loose pieces, what if we organize the bucket brigade? So what if we organize the same number of people, but we put them in a line, and we pass the bucket along, empty it out on the fire, pass it back to be refilled. So all of a sudden we have the exact same number of people, but instead of a soft carbony organization, we have a more diamond-like structure, not in terms of its shape, but maybe in terms of its productivity. And that's pretty good. And that's okay for putting out fires, but we don't actually want to put out fires in education. We want to do a lot more than that. So let's take the same bucket brigade, and instead of making every single person linked just one time, if just a couple of those people, if every one of those people make just a couple more connections, all of a sudden, instead, information is going to travel through that network so much more quickly. We've strengthened the network, and we've ultimately completely changed how information is going to pass through that network. So in terms of a classroom and a school, if I'm only connected to the classrooms on either side of me, which often happens in a building, then information is going to flow really slowly. But if I can kind of like force myself to reach out and connect with the kindergarten teachers that are way down the hall, then that's going to increase the speed that information is going to pass through my organization. I'm going to get more ideas faster, and they're going to get more ideas faster. So that's pretty powerful. And the more that we make these connections, the stronger we make our communities, the more they become like diamonds. All right. The hashtag, if you see a hashtag on the right side of your screen, don't think hashtag. When you look at this picture, can you think about what words this puts together and what this might signal in terms of connections? This is like, you kind of have to be from the 90s to really fully get it.
Well, the two look like pieces of bacon. Maybe I'm hungry. I don't know.
Yeah, no. Bacon, and instead of hashtag, bacon.
Pound? No.
Oh, so close. Bacon.
Number.
Yeah, bacon number. Okay, so if you were around in the 90s, you would know of this game. Hi, Brandon. You would know of this game. One of my little babes popped in. You would know of this game that people were playing with movies. There was an actor named Kevin Bacon, and there was you know it. 6 degrees of separation was the game. So basically, people would like to say that they could link any actor to Kevin Bacon in 6 degrees or less, and your Bacon number as an actor was the number of steps it took for you to connect with Kevin Bacon. And he was mortified by this idea, actually. But then he turned it around and he turned it into his cause, and he realized, 6 degrees of separation, we're all connected by 6 degrees of separation. So if I wanted to send a letter from London, Ontario, and get it to Iowa, and I didn't know you, I probably could get it to you in 6 steps. Just because the way that the world is connected. So 6 degrees talks about connection, and that's really important, but that's not exactly how information flows in an organization and in your life. In your life, information tends to flow in 3 degrees, which is interesting because you think that your friends have a direct impact on you, your family, that's like the 1st degree, your colleagues, the people you actually know. But the truth is that your friends, families, and like the people you're connected to, that 1st degree, the people they're connected to affect you, and even their people connect to you in that 3rd degree. So people you don't even know have a huge impact on your political views, weight gain or loss, even your happiness. So when we think about these networks, and it just happens contagiously, and can lead to really interesting political situations like we're seeing in the US right now. These ideas can be contagious. So what does that mean for us in the classroom? Well, we already talked about how we want to strengthen these networks. But then what if we look to reach just outside of our schools a little bit, outside of the places where we feel most comfortable, to make new connections, to increase the degree to which our ideas can spread and be contagious, and increase the degree to which we can catch those positive ideas that are out there in other networks. quickly, there's really two kinds of people in this group. Well, there's two kinds of people in the world, the people that say there are two kinds of people and the people that don't. So there we are. But in this group, there's really two kinds of actors. And if you know, or people, if you know who you are, you're going to be able to so much better serve your organization and your community and yourself. So there's nodes and there are bridges. Nodes are people that are very, very tightly linked into a group, and they have like a super distilled idea of what's happening inside that network. Because there are so many connections that go through them, they have this ultimate clarity on what's happening. The downside to that is that they can also be in an echo chamber where if the information that's going around in that community isn't true, isn't accurate, then they're going to get that too. So in terms of contagion, they could catch happiness or they could catch a cold. So, but they're going to have the strongest, those nodes, because they're so well connected, they're going to have the deepest sense of what's going on. And it's good to connect to those people. But then there's the bridging people. And I'm kind of like a bridging person. And it's not good or bad, but I tend to be on like the outside edges of a lot of different networks. And so I don't know exactly the core thing that's going on in any one of these nodes, but I can connect them together. I'm kind of loosey-goosey on the outside, and I kind of flit between groups. But what I can do is I can sort of pollinate these different groups with ideas. And I think like it's kind of like being an introvert or an extrovert. Neither one is positive or negative. It's just who we are. But if you have a sense of who you are in these networks, then it makes you feel really empowered to show up and refuse to leave and to see how you can contribute. I know because I'm a bridge, I can connect people. Like one of the things I do is I'm like an over introducer. Like, you know, when I see you at ISTE, I'm going to be like, do you know, I'll introduce you just because I want to make sure that you've made that connection. And I'm never sure who knows each other in the different groups, but some people are much more central. Those are some ideas on why I think we should create diamond networks. So the second thing that I want to talk about is how to own it. And as a classroom teacher, you know, this is a kind of a big thing for me, but I think it's big for all of us because we want to be able to own our ideas. We want our students to be able to own ideas so that they can make the greatest contribution to those connections that they've made. Outside time. Did you catch that, Belle?
Kids are done with lunch. They're on to outside.
Yeah, okay. Bye, children's. Yeah, they're going out for lunch now. So there's three things to owning it. The first thing to owning it is to being inclusive and not extractive. Here's a picture of the night sky over Korea, North and South Korea. And the book I'm referencing there is Why Nations Fail. And essentially, North Korea is extractive. The only light that you see in the night sky is Kim Jong-un's emperor palatial palace. And the unfortunate thing about the politics in North Korea is that you don't have a lot of choice, that most of the resources funnel to the government. It's very extractive. But you can see that even though the geography is the same, and there's going to be huge cultural similarities between North and South Korea. You can see in South Korea that the night sky is illuminated, and it's obvious that there's way more access to technology, way more access to the things that people need for their daily lives. And it's inclusive. People know in South Korea that when they put their effort out there, they're going to be able to reap the benefits of that investment of energy and time and resources for their own lives and for their communities. So what works on a global scale also works on a personal scale. And there's really three things you can do to own it in this way and to be inclusive. The first thing is mentions strengthen networks. So anytime, like you mentioning me and inviting me to talk to your teachers strengthens my network, and it strengthens your network. When I mention friends on Twitter, that strengthens network, because not only am I being like, hey, high five over the internet to my friends, I'm also being like, hey, check this person out, you should follow them. Mm-hmm. So the other thing is, stealing is inherently extractive. Taking other people's ideas is inherently, Kim Jong-un maybe that's a bit harsh, but it's extractive. And the super duper problem with stealing is that it actually kills innovation. If you just take somebody else's idea and call it your own and get to kind of reap the benefits of somebody else's idea, then there's no impetus for you as a student or as a teacher or leader in your setting to put your own secret special sauce on that and to innovate just that one little step. So when we borrow ideas, there's a way higher degree of motivation for us just to put in our own secret sauce and innovate just even one cycle of difference. And that is going to help innovation spread through those diamond networks. So giving credit is really important to being inclusive. Okay, I hope this works on your slides. Can you see the turn signals flashing?
Yep.
Okay. Watch these turn signals, look between the two vehicles and let the turn signals kind of float in your peripheral vision. And sometimes it helps to tap on your lap when you do this. And just notice that they're out of sync and notice when they come into synchronicity. There they go. Oh, and now they go out. Do you notice that happening in your life where things come into sync? Like you're sitting to make a left turn and you notice that the blinkers all go at the same time, or you notice that, two people say something at the same time. I think that synchronicity is really interesting. And I think we should fall in and out of sync in our lives. And I could replace the word sync with love. I think we should fall in and out of love with our ideas and our projects. Easy way of doing this is believe with your whole heart what you do by day and what your friends are doing by day. And then by night, really question those things and see where the holes are. Fall in and out of sync so that you don't get locked into a dogma of believing something that may not be the best truth that you could be living. All right. And then the third one is to cooperate in terms of owning it. And cooperation is really important. And there's really three things that can happen when people come in contact. They can bump into each other and they can both cooperate. That's pretty straightforward. So you and I are cooperating right now, and we both benefit from this. And then we could both defect. Two people could come together and we could both be like, nope, I'm out of here, not going to cooperate. So in terms of like the score of that game, that'd be like a 0. And then something else that happens, of course, when two people come together is that one person will be a cooperator and the other one will defect. So this is what we call like a zero-sum game where one person benefits and the other person loses out. What's interesting about this, especially for people like us that are interested in technology, is that you can actually run game simulations on these different ways of cooperating. So a bunch of computer scientists got together and they ran these 4 different games. The first one was the Jesus game, and where one computer program met with another computer program, and we could substitute people for this. They would always cooperate. And what do you think happens? Well, people get exploited.
Yeah.
Makes for free riders, right? So the Jesus game isn't the most productive game to get the most out of your network. So what's the flip side of the Jesus game? The Lucifer game, the always defect. And what happens with games that are always defecting is that people learn very quickly not to cooperate with those games. And then there's the massive strike, which is to cooperate until the first defection from another game, and then you defect forevermore. And that's somebody who like takes their ball and goes home and is like, I was happy until this point. And then they become basically the same as the Lucifer. And then there's the tit for tat, which is to start nice and to do whatever the other person does. So for a number of years in a row, for 2 years in a row, the tit for tat strategy won. And then the next year, the super duper winning strategy was the generous tit for tat. And this can give us a lens. This is just how computers interact, but it can give us a lens for how we as humans can interact to benefit ourselves, but also for our communities. And the generous tit for tat is you start nice, and you only defect when the other gal does. And you resume cooperation when other people are nice with you. This prevents free riding that you would get from the Jesus strategy. It also prevents exclusion that you would get from the massive strike and the Lucifer game. And so it's kind of a nice structure for thinking about how you might cooperate with people without leaving yourself too vulnerable or without feeling let down when people don't cooperate with you. So this one is the generous tit for tat. And I think we could even go one step further and we could resume the cooperation ourselves instead of waiting for the other person. But it kind of gives us a lens of how we might be cooperating.
Mm-hmm.
Own it, own it, own it. Be inclusive, fall in and out of sync, fall in and out of love of your ideas, and cooperate in a way that's going to keep you and your emotions and humanity kind of intact. So that's the second thing. And okay, so how, if you can also call this owning it like a personal politics, but then the question is, how do we live that every single day from a Monday to a Tuesday and all the hours in between? And that's the third thing I want to talk about today. And that's being mindful. Being mindful, it's such a funny thing these days. Like a lot of people are talking about mindfulness. And I think for many of us, we kind of are like, am I going to sit in a room and burn some incense and meditate and then achieve mindfulness? I think is that kind of the feeling you get when you see that word?
Yeah, until recently. Yeah, it's like a buzzword and how to be in the moment in all of that you do, not just in silence.
Yeah, for sure. And it is about being in the moment. And, I really like the research done by Ellen Langer, and she's able to fast forward us into being mindfulness without the time-consuming yoga class or meditation, which are all fantastic. But she just tells us, just pay attention to new things. And how easy is that? I could totally show up and refuse to leave, powered by that notion of paying attention to new things. So I want to give an example from her research that really hits this home. And a phrase that I've kind of stumbled on is this idea of things that are real, but not true. Something that is real is a story that you tell yourself, but it is not necessarily true. Like you may feel like imposter syndrome is a good example of this. You may feel like an imposter. You may feel like, you're tricking everybody, but it's not the truth. Whereas truth is what's possible when we see what's beyond the real, the story that we tell ourselves or the story that is imposed on us from society. Super concrete example of this. And this does relate to that noticing new things from Langer's research. So here we go. You've seen an eye chart before, right? Clearly, you wear glasses. I do too. Go through this eye chart just on your own, and I see how far down you can get. And challenge yourself to see how far down you can get. Can you, okay, I'm good to about the F line, D. That bottom line gets pretty tricky, right? So what's interesting about this is that what's real about this is that it's an eye chart and we see it all the time. But the imposed message in here, the story that we're getting, is that as you move from the top below, you are going to see less well. That is the inherent story, and that story is not true. And the research shows this. What if we flip that chart, as Ellen Langer did in her research, and what if we started at the top? And now there's this, the story is your eyesight is going to improve. You know what happened, right? All the people that saw a reverse eye chart, their eyesight miraculously got better.
Yeah.
You don't think anything changed with their anatomy, do you? Nothing changed in like the structure of their eyeballs from like 30 seconds to, a 30-second switch like that. What changed was the story. What I believe is that, and this comes from Ellen Langer, people much more clever than me certainly, is that I think there's a lot of things like that that are around us all the time that are real but not true. That we see them in education. It's that's the way we've always done it, or it's because of the internet or whatever. And there are these stories, or like these stories like, no, I'm a classroom teacher, I couldn't do that, but they're not true. So we need to be mindful of new things. And we need to be mindful of the stories that are out there that we are constructing ourselves, and that society is constructing for us and for our students. It's kind of like keeping us in the way of being fantastic. What's keeping us in the way of feeling powerful and having that feeling of like, we could show up and get some awesome stuff done. Last thing that connects to this idea of mindfulness is power. And I don't think people really, power and mindfulness almost seem at odds. One seems like very egotistical and one seems very peaceful. But there's a lot of peace in the word power if you think about it in terms of bringing your best presence forward, so that you, in all that you do, you feel that the real you showed up and the real you was there in the room, whether it be the classroom, the meeting room, a webinar with your friend, like it's that power. And maybe you're familiar with Amy Cuddy's work. She's the second most viewed TED Talk of all time. She talked about this power posing, and that our bodies can actually tell our minds a lot. And I say this to my students all the time, like, we do this thing called slant, sit up, listen, ask questions, nod to show you understand, and track the speaker or what the speaker is speaking about. And that sounds like a mouthful, but my little guys in grade 3, they're like, slant. And the thing is, it does something for them. These power poses make us feel capable, and they are sending messages from our bodies to our brains that we are capable. These postures of closing in send us the opposite message. And what's interesting is when we start to think about technology, there's an interesting link between these power poses and the size of the device we're using. The bigger the device, the more we end up sitting in these expansive body positions, the less we tend to be in these closed positions. And these expansive positions make us feel powerful and mindful, and they make us feel like we can take on the world and engage with others in positive ways. And our cortisol, stress hormones go down, our testosterone levels go up, our ability, so we become just kind of like the best versions of ourselves. So it's something to kind of like keep in mind, right? When we're engaging with technology ourselves or having our students work on devices. We do need to be mindful of the posture that we're using for the wellness of our own bodies and minds, but also because it's going to affect how capable we feel of bringing our best self forward. And, engagement's been such a big word in education and educational technology. I mean, like iPads, they're so engaging. But we, I think, are starting to see a shift in the conversation from feeling engaged with technology to feeling empowered. And I think all these other pieces of being mindful ourselves as educators and our students, and at making sure our body posture is making us feel powerful is going to help with that shift as well. Because it is messy, and it's messy for our kids too. They have complicated lives that have their own dramas and challenges and opportunities, and all of us do in education. And in that mess, you want to call it the war cry of hack the classroom like I do, or disrupt, or transform, redefine. But I kind of feel like maybe we should move to stewardship. Maybe what we need to do is show up to this space, the classroom, educational technology, wherever you are, and be a steward of it. Bring your best self forward and see what you can do to put forward incremental change that's really positive and not like so earth-shatteringly like crushing. Just be a steward of it like people are stewards of natural spaces. So today I talked about connecting, that we want to create diamond networks that are strong, beautiful, and durable, just by the way that we connect a little bit differently. I think we should own it. And I think we need to be mindful and really be aware of new and novel things, and be aware of the stories that we're telling ourselves that are real but not true. And I want you to do that. Show up and refuse to leave. I'm going to do that. And I hope all your people do. And thank you. That's all.
Oh, that's perfect. And that's a power pose, right? That is all.
There we go, everyone.
Yeah, well, thank you. So you have your third graders at the beginning of the year. Do you talk about the power poses and like practice them in your class? And how does that roll out? I'm just curious.
Oh, that's such a great question. I'm always prompting them, just saying like if they come in from the yard. So yes and no. When they come in from the yard and they're like, they had an issue on the yard, they're really sad, whatever, I'm kind of like, obviously I'll talk through whatever the problem was best as I can, but I tell them just to like roll their shoulders back, open their chest up, breathe in, and I tell them your body is going to tell your mind that you're okay. So there's that kind of language that's sort of just like part of how I help my kids just manage their emotional bumps like throughout the time. And I don't talk about power poses, but like I said, I do use that SLANT acronym, sit up, listen, ask questions, nod to show you understand, and track the speaker. And on the surface, it could look like a classroom management type of thing, because what teacher doesn't love, or what presenter, whoever doesn't love having a perky audience that's just like, yes, like the friendlies, right? But it's not for me. It's actually for them, because there's, like I said, the Amy Cuddy research, and there's lots of good research that shows that body position actually does so much for our brains. So it's not explicitly talked about, but it's definitely implicit in those prompts.
Mr. Harris, contact the office, please. Mr. Harris.
Pardon me.
No, you're fine. You probably have kiddos coming in soon from yard. You guys call it yard and not recess. We call it recess, so that's difference between Canada and the U.S.
Yes, I'm sure you know there's probably like a little subtle difference in my accent too. I always enjoy when I travel throughout Canada, but especially through the US, how the accent varies so much in different parts. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming and taking time out of your busy day with your kids. And it was great to meet them before we started the recording.
Yeah, that was fun. And great to see you again. And I look forward to seeing you in just a few weeks. And good luck with the year end.
Yep, you too.